Hello, and welcome to Homeowner AF, the Canadian first-time homebuying podcast. I'm Brianna Goslin, mortgage agent level 2, and I work with Canadian first-time homebuyers every single day. If you want to own real estate in Canada but aren't sure how to position yourself to get there, this is the podcast for you. I want to see more young Canadians in the market, building equity and long-term wealth. That starts with getting the right advice at the right time, so you're positioned to act when it matters. Each week, I'll bring you bite-sized episodes that actually move the needle toward homeownership. Short, strategic, and packed with practical tips that you can use right away. I'll cover topics like minimum down payment, closing costs, credit, co-signers, and more. Remember, your finances are like a thumbprint. No two are the same. For advice tailored specifically to you, book your free call at briecallme.com. Now, let's get into it. All right. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Homeowner AF. Today, I want to talk about closing costs. And quite frankly, closing costs are something that get left out when people talk about home buying. And a lot of first-time home buyers just don't know that there are these pretty hefty closing costs that you're going to have to pay out at the lawyer's office before you close on your first home. Now, if you've already listened to my pre-approval episode, you know that I give you an estimate of what your closing costs are going to be at the time of pre-approval. So you know how much you're going to need in the bank. But the thing about closing costs is, and you may notice this theme as you learn more about real estate and real estate transactions, is that there is so much variability in closing costs and in what it is going to cost you. So I am going to talk very high level here about what you're going to have to be paying at the lawyer's office, depending on your purchase. But if you want specifics, of course, you can always book a call at www.briecallme.com and we can have a virtual meeting and we can chat about closing costs, qualifications. I can answer any questions that you may have that individually apply to you. Because, of course, a mortgage is like a thumbprint, and so are closing costs when it comes to variability in cost. Okay, let's get into it now. So how much are you actually going to need? Now, when it comes to the lender, a lender is going to want 1.5% of your purchase price to be visible in your bank account as well as your down payment. So they're going to want to ensure that you can close on this purchase that you're anticipating, right? Now, 1.5% is a nice chunk of change, but it may not be enough. Closing costs could come out to 4 to 6% of your purchase price, depending on what the transaction is, what the price of the home is, and if you are a first-time home buyer or not. And we are going to talk a little bit about how to qualify, who qualifies as a first-time home buyer as we progress in this episode. So first things first, and this is one of the biggest ones, is legal fees. How much are you going to be paying your lawyer? And now let me preface this with your lawyer, your real estate lawyer, will have the most accurate estimate of what they're going to charge you. So it's important that once you have an accepted offer and the ball starts rolling, that you either ask for a referral to a lawyer or you connect with your trusted real estate lawyer to get that quote so that you can budget for the closing costs. Now, typically, a lawyer will cost between $1,800 and $2,500 depending on what they're doing for you, and fees fluctuate depending on who the professional is. But again, they can give you an estimate of exactly what this is going to be or closer to what this is going to be when you meet with them for your meeting before you close on your home. Now, what does a lawyer actually do? What are you paying them for? Well, they're doing all sorts of things in the background once your mortgage agent passes them the baton. So they're doing a title search, they're prepping your documents, they're registering the ownership, and they're really directing all of the funds on closing day. So where does the money actually go? Well, your lawyer generally acts as a hub. So they receive your down payment from you. They'll receive the mortgage funds from the lender, and then they'll distribute everything. So they'll distribute the money to the seller, to the government for land transfer tax, to discharge any existing mortgage on the property. So you wire it all to one place, or you provide a bank draft all to one place, and the lawyer handles the rest. Now, a really interesting question that I get from first-time home buyers often is, but how does this money get to the lawyer? And that is completely valid, because how would you know? If you've never brought this large sum of money to the lawyer before or anywhere, how would that happen? So your lawyer will direct you to how they want to receive the money, but typically it's a wire transfer or a bank draft. And they can walk you through that process. And I can also walk you through the specific way that your lawyer is going to want that. And I can coach you through that if you have any questions. So when we're talking about lawyers, though, really the sticky point is get a hold of them early and ask what's included in disbursements so you can have the best idea of what you're going to be paying on closing day. The next big one is land transfer tax. So land transfer tax, that's going to fluctuate depending on how much your property is, where in Ontario it is, and what the purchase price is. So essentially, if you are not living in Toronto, not purchasing in Toronto, and your home the purchase price comes under $368,000, your rebate, basically your $4,000 rebate as a first-time home buyer, will take care of the land transfer tax. So you will not have to pay land transfer tax. Now, of course, you need to qualify as a first-time home buyer. And this one is super sticky. You can never have owned any property anywhere in the world to qualify for that land transfer tax rebate. Now, if you are a resident of Toronto, so if you're purchasing in Toronto, then you're going to have an additional land transfer tax, a municipal land transfer tax added on top of what is already charged by the provincial government. But good news is that you, as a first-time buyer, will qualify for an extra amount of rebate. So first-time buyers can get up to $4,475 back on the municipal portion. So if you're a first-time homebuyer in Toronto, you could potentially receive $8,475 combined towards your land transfer tax rebate. So, of course, you must be a first-time home buyer. And if you're buying with a partner who doesn't qualify, you only receive a partial rebate based on how the home ownership is shared. And we can talk about what that could look like. You could register one as 1% owner and the other is 99 to get the most amount of rebate possible. But of course, that is individual and that will change depending on what your transaction looks like. So these rebates are actually applied at closing through your lawyer. So it reduces what you owe on that day. It's not necessarily a check that you're going to receive later on, but it will decrease the amount of closing costs that you're going to have to provide. All right, another big closing cost is the tax that you will pay on your CMHC mortgage insurance if you are entering into a minimum down payment insured mortgage. So the premium, that gets paid on top of the mortgage. So you don't pay that upfront. That will be put into all of your documents in when the lawyer goes through what you're actually paying. You'll also see that insurance amount on your mortgage commitment that I go through with you. But Ontario charges provincial tax on the insurance premium, and that portion is due on closing day. So if you want an example, if you're purchasing a $500,000 home, you have 5% down, which is the minimum, you're going to be paying a $19,000 premium in your mortgage as part of your monthly mortgage payment. Now, there's also a provincial tax of $1,520 that's due at closing on that $19,000 premium. So this one can sometimes surprise people if you've not been working with an agent or a broker because it's not included in the home price and it is an additional cost that you're going to incur and you're going to have to pay before you close on that home. Other things that people sometimes don't think about are rural properties and some considerations that you may need to make there, some higher costs that you might incur there. So if there's a well or septic inspection, that of course is going to cost a little bit more, as well as survey costs, which can run from $1,500 to $3,000. And then also if an appraisal is required, that may cost a little bit more depending on where the property is and what kind of outbuildings are on the property. So just know that if you are buying in a rural area of Ontario, that you might need to budget for more closing costs. But of course, that is something that your mortgage agent or broker can run you through when they know that you're looking at these types of property. So what other costs could you incur? What do you need to keep in mind? So we have title insurance, which could run you between $200 and $400, and then the home inspection, which I mentioned, but that's actually not going to be paid for at the closing table. That's going to be paid for previous, and you should get that done during the conditional period. So while your deal is still conditional. All right. So what do I want you to take away from this episode? First of all, you need to get a hold of all of your professionals early. So talk to your mortgage agent or broker early. And if you are not provided with a closing cost estimate, ask for it. Absolutely ask for it, because you should have those numbers locked in your mind even before you're making offers. Also, get a hold of your lawyer early, because you want to be able to budget for those closing costs and make sure that they're in your bank account well ahead of closing date. And we don't want any surprises. So the more information that you get before closing, the less surprises you have, and the more comfortable you're going to be, and the more on budget you're going to be, because ultimately, that's so important. You are entering into a 25 or 30-year commitment with this mortgage. You want to make sure that you're going to start it not having to borrow for those closing costs. You want to make sure that you're in a great position to be successful financially. So if you have any questions about closing costs, again, remember that they do fluctuate and it's going to look different for everybody. So if you're chatting with your brother or sister who's recently purchased, or somebody who's purchased 5-10 years ago, things may look wildly different for you. So make sure that you book in. Call me at www.briecallme.com and we can have a virtual chat about closing costs and make sure that you are absolutely ready for this big purchase that you're going to make. So if you have any questions, again, go ahead and send me a voice note. I'd love to answer them on air, and I look forward to chatting with you next week. Bye, guys. Thanks for listening to Homeowner AF, the Canadian first-time home buying podcast. You'll find links to everything I mentioned in today's episode in the show notes, along with details on how to connect with me. I welcome all of your first-time home buying questions. Send me a voice note to have your question featured on air. And if you're ready to talk through specifics for your first home purchase, you can book a free call at briecallme.com. Remember, if home ownership is your goal, you could be closer than you think. You just need the right information to make the right move. I'll be back next week with another tidbit to help you get there.